Holy moly. I didn't think anybody thought we would ever get to issue 30 with all this egomaniac, all this stuff going on, baby Thanos, Steve. It's pulsating in all three of this. Steve, what do we got to do?
You know what we're going to do is boom!
Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Steve and Cimino Says Boom Shoe on the Pop XP issue 30. Now, down below, Billy Tucci in spirit. We got baby Thanos himself, the big bad. Steve says boom. Now, what do people need to know?
Well, I'll tell you what. First and foremost, they need to know to hit up their local comic shop and get a copy of X-Men Legends #1, written by the man himself, Mr. Roy Thomas. Fantastic. Woo! Gave that a read just a couple of days ago. Loved it, John. And also, once that's done, make sure to click that bell to get notifications when we go live and hit that subscribe button so you know you'll never miss an episode. And gentlemen, I'm hyped. I'm ready. Steve, I got to say, after, revisiting this issue, I've thrown out all my aerosol cans. All gone.
Yes, that context will be explained shortly.
Yes, what people need to know is this is a spotlight issue with Steve Says Boom, baby Thanos. I love it. People have been clamoring for the man to say his thing. So, Steve, I love when you educate us. You're like that cool substitute teacher that comes in and you're like, yeah, he's coming in. This is the best guy. So, Steve, what do we need to know today? Because I got a feeling we got a little... starts with the G. Our wild man with the G from Marvel seems to be your hero, the guy up above on the Rainbow Bridge. We love to celebrate Steve Gerber himself. Take it away, Steve. What do we need?
You know, it's really funny that, we've mentioned Steve Gerber so many times, and I'm sure some people who watch this show are probably thinking, Steve, you there's just not Gerber, I don't mean it. It just happens. Right now, it's been happening that way. And in recent years, I've begun to really feel the weight of how brilliant Steve Gerber was. When I was younger, there were certain things that he was writing about, certain in-between panel stuff that I wasn't getting. Now, at this advanced age, because I'm 30 years old now,
old man
in Mad Titan years.
Yeah.
But now I'm beginning to really get Steve Gerber, and he's coming up, higher and higher in my estimation. And what I want to talk about today is Defenders #26. Okay, it has a glorious red cover, okay? And before we get into the actual meat and bones of this issue, I want to tell you about how I ended up getting my copy. As you guys know, I wasn't in America as a youngster, so I wasn't in the land of everything where all the comics are falling from the sky and you're going down to the 7-Elevens, anything is available, AF-15s, you're all having a good time. I was in England scratching, pouring, looking under drain pipes for issues. I had a couple of Defenders issues, but whenever I asked for anything in particular, the guy at the shop would be like, oh, I don't know about that, Steve. I haven't seen that issue before. And I was like, oh, God. So I had a couple of issues of Defenders, of course, and I managed to get a couple. But this issue 26 it just was never there. So fast forward, 1991. I'm finally in America. I'm finally settled. I go to my first comic shop. It's in Santa Monica. It's called Heidi Ho Comics. And if anyone is watching this that knows the California, LA area, Heidi Ho Comics was a big deal.
Yeah.
Big store. Billions of back issues. I walked in there and said, I'm looking for Defenders. And they said, oh, and they got this ladder out. They went all the way up to this high little thing and they got this box down. And funny enough, the stuff wasn't even priced. It was just comics without boards, just in bags, bags. And I just couldn't believe the box started from issue 1. And I had like almost tears pouring. I was like, oh, God, it's issue 1. I saw issue 1 and I saw it, but there was no prices on this. I began to panic. I was like, what if I ask for 1? And he says it's like $50 or something. I can't afford that. It just
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of money back in 1991.
Yeah.
So I'm flicking through issue 26. I pull it up. I'm like, oh, I don't care. This issue is coming home. I've never seen it. Look at that beautiful cover. Look at those, floating heads. Look at that beautiful red sky. And I was like, oh, there's the guy.
That's John Romita. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful John Romita. So that was just how I got that issue. I didn't get that issue until 1991, and then finally I put it in with the other issues I had. So, with that being said, I remember when I got home and I was like, okay, I'm going to finally be able to read this issue because I had all the others, but I didn't have this first part. And I thought it would be perfect today to go into it because, in my opinion, this is where Steve Gerber begins to really hit his peak. Okay. Now, I know there's people out there screaming, well, how did that? La, la, la. I'm going to explain why I think this is a special issue. So, without further ado, let's crack on. Let's get into the first page. Okay, it says Savage Time. And you're probably wondering, who in the hell is that guy in that, coat? Okay. This is a classic little plot line that was left over from Steve Englehart. Steve Englehart, of course, had brought back Valkyrie. And Valkyrie had taken the body of Barbara Norris. Okay. Well, that other guy in the coat is Jack Norris, and that is Barbara Norris's husband. What he doesn't realize is that the Valkyrie hates men, doesn't want to be anywhere near them, and so he's like, hey, I know we need to get back together again. And, our life needs to begin. And I'm thinking, come on, man, look at Valkyrie. Your life is not going to get back to normal again. And by the way, look at that beautiful drawing. By the way, that's Aragorn in the back there. That's the Black Knight's horse. For those of you who are continuity conscious, that's because of coming back from the 11th century. Okay, I'm not going to get too much into the continuity because we could be here 9 hours. So go to the next page.
Roy Thomas named that horse.
I know the funny thing is, I completely forgotten, but if you take a look at the credits, it's Len Wein is the editor in this issue. Roy's not the editor of this issue. So I completely forgot that. I thought this was a Roy job. So obviously Roy was being lazy this month. We will talk to him later on about that. So obviously this is beautiful Steve Gerber, doing personal relationship plot lines, okay, which he was very good at. Everyone knows that he was wild and, you could have vampire cows and talking ducks. But these little quiet moments, okay, also very, very good, and I remember at the time when I first read this, I wasn't, I was sort of naive in a lot of ways, but I just love that little scene, that lower left scene where he's forcing himself on her. He's like, I'm going to give you a kiss and remind you how good I am. And I'm thinking to myself, he is so lucky that sword didn't go right through his belly. All right, so go to the next page. All right. Finally, the Valkyrie finally gets to the point. It's like, you better start to learn, okay, that we're not going to be together again. All of a sudden, there's this big earthquake. Okay, and it's like, well, what in the hell is going on? Okay, and, go to the next page. And Jack Norris is saying, well, this is Manhattan. There's no earthquakes here. Now, we have to go back a little bit to understand why there's earthquakes. This issue follows directly, okay, from Giant-Sized Defenders number 5. For those of you who are continuity masters, I don't know John is. And in that issue, the Guardians of the Galaxy arrive in our time. Okay, now, Steve Gerber is basically responsible for bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy out of limbo hell. They had been in limbo since 1969. Steve Gerber obviously had a fascination for this little team and brings them back in Marvel 2-in-1 number 5. Okay, in issue number 4 is a crossover with Captain America, and they go off into the future. Okay, but issue 5, which is cover dated September 1974, is when we get to see the Guardians again. Okay, so the Guardians that we saw for about 10-15 years were the Steve Gerber version of the Guardians. Okay, so we're going to get to see the magnificence of his work on the Guardians and the Defenders at the same time. So continuing on from Giant Size Defenders 5, they've arrived on Earth, but because of a time paradox, okay, again, well, you continuity nuts, you know what I'm going to say right now. We have Vance Astro from the future, and then we also have on Earth a very young Vance Astro who hasn't done anything yet, okay? And they're both in the same timeline at the same time, and guess what? It's causing temporal shifts, causing, you know, all sorts of things. So go to the next page. Look at that beautiful drawing right there. Sal Buscema. Sal, we love you. You know, just love those guys. When I read this stuff, I'm always amazed about how smooth Steve Gerber was just able to write all these characters in. You know, it just flows. And of course, take a look at the bottom of the page. There is a beautiful footnote. They don't do that anymore, but anyone can go down there and say, oh, we crashed on Earth in our era in Giant-Sized Defenders 5. Boom! Why don't they do that anymore? Because they just don't know how to do it. Okay, so go to the next page. All right, so there we see Vance Astro is like, wait a minute, is these earthquakes, what's causing it? And Doctor Strange, you know, again, Doctor Strange is brilliant in the Defenders. I actually prefer him in the Defenders than his own book, because he's not just always talking about, you know, Dormammu and stuff like that.
Me too.
Yes. So he's going on, he's like explaining, well, wait a minute, we're going to have to resolve this situation. We have to repair your ship and get you out of here. Because otherwise things are going to go wrong. And you're probably wondering, well, and as you can see, there's the ship surrounded by the authorities and camera people, you know. And it's funny when you think about it now, that would never happen. They would never allow cameras to get that close to an alien ship. Oh, look at the live feed. Look at it. It's going all over the world. Okay. You know, of course, this is many years before the X-Files, when, you know, we began to realize that the governments, you know, would never allow normal humans, you know, to see this thing. And this is pretty amazing. So they actually have newscasts out there waiting. And there's one person still in that ship. So go to the next page. And out comes that person. And who's there with him? Oh, look at that. Little Vance Astro right there. And that's Martinex, okay? Of course, he's the silicon-based being, last survivor from Pluto. And all of a sudden, you know, it starts to get a little bit scary here, because you can take a look. You can take a look at that second panel up there at the top. That guy's got his gun, you know, and he's thinking, oh, any second now, he's going to shoot. The boy's going to die. And then the whole of our universe is going to go crazy, and it would take eternity in the living tribunal to put it back together again. Okay, so this is where Doctor Strange is like, I'm going to take action right away. I've got to fix this situation. And he fires off that beam of energy right there. We go to the next page. All right, so boom, transports themselves over there. He's like, okay, I'm going to calm this whole situation down. This Earth is in a very precarious situation right here. And as you can see, the team really does rely on Doctor Strange a tremendous amount. Yes, Nighthawk is the financial power. You know, he has the base, he has the money, the way to get things done. The Hulk is the brute strength, of course. You know, Valkyrie is sort of like a wild card. She has this, you know, of course, you know, brute strength as well. You know, but she's definitely a wild card. But Doctor Strange is the thinking person. You know, he's like the Reed Richards. He's going to think about things. He's going to do the planning. He's going to make sure they're doing everything right. So it's going to be up to Doctor Strange here to fix this situation before things get out of control. We go to the next page. So look at this moment. Look at that top panel right there. Little Vance Astro is me in the older version. Okay. Now the funny thing is that he's actually touching him right there. I think in, you know, like in modern movies, whenever someone does that, you know, they always like fold into each other and there's like a huge black hole that opens. But okay, that's not happening here. They're actually able to speak. And this is where, you know, Vance Astro is going to sit down, and Doctor Strange is also saying, okay, can you explain to us how on earth we got to the situation where you ended up being in space for 1,000 years? What is the history of your Earth? This is where Steve Gerber is going to roll his sleeves up. He's going to do so much great work here. And again, people think of Steve as just this crazy and wild man coming in and doing crazy stuff. He did his research on these issues, almost Steve Englehartian, okay, in his research. Okay, and at the time at Marvel, okay, continuity was still very tight. Editors and writers working in a very cohesive way. You couldn't do crazy things. And if you were going to try and do stuff, you know, that's why it's a shame we can't check with Len Wein, of course, because Len has gone. And if Roy was editor, you know, we could have asked him, you know, whether Steve Gerber said, hey, by the way, I'm going to do something very special in this issue. What do you think? You know, we may get a chance to ask him. But anyway, let's go to the next page, because this is where the fun starts. This is where we get Gerberism. Okay? Now, you can imagine that Steve Gerber was a little bit of a hippie. Okay? And he had certain points of view at the time. And one of those points of view was, you know, basically Earth was going to be, you know, going down the tubes because of us. So he does this beautiful little story here. He says, we decided we valued dry armpits and the $3 billion aerosol industry over our flowers and food, and ultimately our health. Also, the scientists warned us. And now take a look at that little picture, because there it says, this is during the skin cancer epidemic of 1982. Okay, it looks like they're trying to survive COVID. Okay. But again, he was giving us a little warning. And Earth at the time, okay, everyone's using aerosols, so we burned the atmosphere away. And then it's going to get worse. Okay. And then it's going to say, well, people start to get these cancers, not only skin cancers, but huge cancers. So we get a rise in bionics. Science in bionics grows. And then I love this little section here. In 1988, our space program ended with a bang. We sent a man on a 1,000-year journey to the stars, and it took the last of our funding. Where did the rest of the funding go? Congress had appropriated the rest of to pay for more bionics research, which ultimately led to the bionics wars in the 1990s. Now, some of you are probably thinking, wait a minute, that's Deathlock. That's Astonishing Tales. Yes, it is. That's the first little part of the key right there. So that story, of course, with Deathlock was sort of still going, but sort of coming to an end by the time this issue was there. But Steve Gerber, you know, was going to craft that timeline into the same timeline as the Guardians of the Galaxy. So boom, that's what we get right there. Next page. So basically that explains, you know, another one of Steve's little pet peeves was he didn't like the concept of us having a nuclear war. So he's like, the bionics wars may have gone on forever if it wasn't for an accident when a nuclear bomb goes off. And, you know, North America and Canada are devastated by a terrible nuclear explosion.
Oh, hang on one sec. I'll edit this out. I just hit this thing here. Sorry about that. There we go.
So we move forward. And again, it says here, and humanity finally came to its senses. 1995 saw the signing of the Treaty of Peking and the formation of the first Federation of Nations. I just love this stuff. God, Steve. Steve! It says, at last we were working together and we turned our technology away from mindless proliferation of weapons and make it work for the people instead of against them. Okay, slowly, cities slowly began to smile and laugh again. Humankind united. It was a realization of a dream. And then he lays this one on you. Look at that last panel. And then that dream was cruelly obliterated in the year 2001 when we were invaded by our neighboring planet. Okay. Now, what he's referring to, of course, is Kill Raven. Okay. Amazing Adventures issue 18. So here we go. Steve Gerber is responsible for putting Deathlock, Guardians, okay, and the Kill Raven in the same timeline. And it fits seamlessly. Look how beautiful it is. It's like it was a puzzle and no one could work it out. Steve comes in, he just puts it together and explains it in a great way. Oh, Steve. I can't tell you how much I just love this. Okay, next page.
There he is.
Yes, so there we get. There's the Kill Raven, okay, from Amazing Adventures. So those of you who have collections of Amazing Adventures and Astonishing Tales, okay, you know what I'm talking about right here. And then, but he continues, okay, because there's a time lapse, you know, before we get to the time of the Guardians, what's going on. And I love the fact here he says, you know, we do know that for the next 500 years there was a barbaric period with science highly centralized in feudal city-states ruled by so-called techno-barons who eventually went to war with each other for the possession of the moon. God, I just love it. And he goes, and that was their undoing. The serfs didn't want to fight the war, they rebelled. And with the execution of the tyrant Qual in 2525, the reign of the techno-barons ended. You know, so, you know, it's funny what we're getting here. There is some slight, you know, consistency with the realm of Star Trek. Now, remember in Star Trek, in the 1990s, you had Khan and his people running riot and going crazy. So it's really funny how creators, writers, and editors at this time had a certain point of view. And it was like they always, a lot of them all, you know, basically went the same way. But here we have, you've got Gerber going all the way along here. Okay, so finally, okay, everyone's happy again. And it says, communications were restored between city-states and a second world federation was established. We were on our way up once again, and this time we would reach for the stars. Okay, next page. So this is where we get to the point where we get the Earth going off and colonizing, you know, and this is where we get the real, you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy that we saw in 1969. So Steve is going over that territory and putting that in place, letting you know how long it took for us to get there. Next page. So everything is going well. It's magnificent, right? And then this is where it gets sort of sad. Take a look at that third panel. And it says, well, in 3006, he landed, a 1,000-year-old prisoner in a suit of copper foil. A suit he couldn't discard because contact with the air would reduce him to dust. His interstellar voyage had made a farce. Man had already been there to greet him. Poor slob. He was given a hero's welcome, but somehow he couldn't make himself care. So in the meantime, while he was floating off in space, you know, we worked out how to do faster than light travel. So by the time he arrives, we're already there. Okay? Again, it's something, you know, that would pain him for a long time. And then Gerber's like, well, wait a minute. We can't have everything to happy. So take a look at that last panel. Not until 3007, when, believe it or not, it happened all over again. A race called the Badoon. This time they came from nowhere, questing for galactic empire. And again, our civilization was wrecked. Next page. I just love this, okay? 10 centuries of humans struggling, 1,000 years of painfully clawing our way up from the, the dregs, wiped out in an instant. So at this time, the Badoon not only, conquered Earth and everything else, but all the surrounding galaxies. They were like all powerful, okay? Then we have this little sequence down here as a little flashback there to Captain America, Marvel 2-in-1. Number 5.
Yeah.
A perfect way to do it. Okay, next page. So this is where little young Vance is like, oh my God, is that what's going to happen to us? Now remember, this story is being written in 1975. Okay. And at this time, the timeline hadn't been split off yet. Okay. So for a moment, if you were reading this, you would think that other writers would have to follow this timeline, okay, and so that, in 1995, this was going to happen in 2000, but of course it didn't. And the timeline of the Guardians of the Galaxy is not the timeline that we have here in what they call the 616 universe. It's not, okay? But little young Vance there is like, oh, is that going to really happen? La la la. Was all that? Doctor Strange is explaining, hey, that doesn't have to happen to us, okay? Because now we have knowledge and we don't have to do that. It doesn't have to go the same way. So he uses a little spell and sends young Vance home. Go to the next page. So basically, now it's come to the point where they really have to get the Guardians off Earth. They've got to get them off. And what I love about this is, right there, if you take a look at that last panel,
Yeah.
Jack Norris is having a hard time dealing with this. He's just like, what the hell's going on here? Okay, and he puts his arm on her shoulder. And I love that there. And he goes, keep your hands off me. Okay, again, another great little subplot. Next page. All right, so with the ship up to a certain point, okay, it takes Doctor Strange's amazing skills, okay, his magical skills, to get the ship off Earth. Because obviously there's no way that, you could fix it, putting it at a docking station and find, NASA wasn't going to help. How else were they going to do it? This is the importance of Doctor Strange. This is how powerful he is. He ain't got time to do any of that. He just uses a spell. He gets a ship out into orbit, okay? And then basically what they're going to do is they're going to go on an adventure into space, to follow up the Badoon and have a little fight and a massive fight themselves. So
Yeah.
This issue, what does it do? For those of you at this time who were Marvel continuity maniacs, this set in motion something that stayed the same for basically forever. It finally put the stories that were in Amazing Adventures and Astonishing Tales and gave them gravitas, gave them weight. They weren't just little throwaway stories, okay, like, oh, the stories were cancelled, because obviously, the stories in Amazing Adventures and, Deathlock, they were cancelled in like 1976, okay? But because of this story, because of Steve Gerber doing his due diligence, sitting there one day and thinking, wow, this all fits. All I've got to do is put it together, okay? Look what he did. I love this issue for many, many, many reasons, okay? And this is what drew a lot of fans to Marvel at the time and not to DC. This was really tight continuity, done perfectly, okay? Anyone who's working in the Marvel Universe today needs to read stuff like this and see that it can be done, okay? I know the Marvel Universe is much bigger now, but it can be done, okay? And you can get things sort of straight. You can get everyone on the same field and go, oh, okay, I love it. So, again, one, I wanted to explain the amount of pain it took me to finally find this issue. I had to come all the way to America to get issue 26. Two, okay, the grandeur of Steve Gerber going there and doing his Marvel research. The beautiful art of Sal Buscema, of course.
Yeah,
Okay.
beautiful.
Just beautiful. And again, another Guardians of the Galaxy masterpiece. Again, there's basically two eras of Guardians of the Galaxy fans. Okay. After the sort of stories that ran up until issue 29, the Guardians of the Galaxy actually got their own series. Okay. In Marvel Presents #3, went through issues 3 through 12. Gerber actually gets that ball rolling, and then it gets taken over by Roger Stern, if I'm correct. And then some of this stuff was, looked back again in the Guardians of the Galaxy series from 1990. Okay, by Valentino, but
Oof.
yeah. There was a lot of heart, and obviously, but then again, for me, this is the real Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I will admit, I did read the Guardians of the Galaxy from 2005, 2004, the Andy Lanning Guardians, the Guardians that we would eventually get in the movies, but that's why we have this schism. We have the Guardians, the modern Guardians fans who go back to that, Abnett and Lanning series from 2004. That's their version. But for people like me and John, okay, our Guardians are basically here. This is completely different. And by the way, I really love that little visual we have here with the cover and the Guardians running toward us. I love that. Yeah. I love it. Just so good. So
classic.
That's basically why I love that issue so much. So John, I'm curious.
Dying to get into this. First, I want to say that with the Guardians, you got to remember in the movie, was it the second one? Was it the extra credits? They had Sylvester Stallone was Vance Astro, correct? And then they had those characters as different. Yondu was trying to get back into their good graces, but they had those. I liked that because it was a nice homage to them, to see them. That got me excited and stuff with when I saw that. But obviously they didn't really look like them as they did here. Okay, let's go back for a second. Now, the reason why I remember this issue a lot, yes, the continuity parts of Steve Gerber were going back now with a more of a grown up, more of a better eye for the details. You see it, and love the Kill Raven. Obviously, that was a Roy Thomas, Neil Adams, and Jerry Conway character. Yes. That was pretty cool. And then obviously Rich Buckler was Deathlock. But why I was always intrigued by this was the dynamic at the starting with Valkyrie and what was his name?
Jack Norris.
Jack Norris.
Yeah, Jack Norris. Okay, wasn't it his wife was possessed by the Valkyrie? Is that correct? Like it was still her, but it was the Valkyrie in her. Like it wasn't her. Wasn't she? Was that body hosting her, or when she becomes a Valkyrie? Am I incorrect with saying?
Her mind had completely gone after her exposure to the Undying Ones in issue 3.
Okay.
And then in issue 4, they're all captured, and the Enchantress is like, well, we need a way to escape. And she's like, well, there just happens to be a perfect little vessel here, mindless. Okay, and I will just transfer Valkyrie's spirit inside Barbara Norris's body. Boom, and that's what we have. So you're right. There is no Barbara Norris. Barbara Norris's mind was snapped and destroyed in the realm of the Undying Ones.
Right, I remember that. But here's where I love Steve Gerber. This is the genius, is how you always, and Steve, you get it perfectly, how you talk about those tender moments. Because Steve Gerber can go all the way to the sky with just weirdness and all this stuff. And you're always scratching your head like, what? But then he'll pop in this realism and this tenderness. Because the reason why I remembered this issue was because of those moments with Jack Norris and Valkyrie. He was so hurting because he wanted his wife.
Yes.
But that wasn't her. and that it was such an interesting dynamic. And as my young brain would always look at that, I'm getting goosebumps now because I remember reading it for the first time and I'm going through that and I felt for him. And this is kind of funny when you're young and you're looking at comic books because I watched movies and I watched TV shows, but for some reason the comics always got to me more. So reading that, I could feel his pain. So then when all this crap is going on at the end, is like you're saying, he's just trying to have a tender moment with the Valkyrie, and because he sees her as his wife and he's trying to touch her and she's like, get your hands off me and all that stuff. That has to be so crazy painful in the midst of all this stuff that's going on. And then you see those tender moments. There's a man hurting there, and that's a great subplot that's going on there. And I always envision that stuff. And I'm going to tell you, this is going to make you laugh, Steve, but sometimes during my years when I was going out with girls and then you get hurt by girls, I remember one time feeling like Jack Norris. I swear to God, it would come up in my head like, God, this is how Jack Norris felt. But I'm not kidding. See, Niall, you have to understand, and Steve will understand these. These comics did something to me. They were basically scripture to me. It's like, and they define my whole life. So when Steve reading that, I remember reading those, and I love the continuity thing, but it was the Jack Norris stuff that really wrapped itself. And then they go with the Badoon and all that stuff, and he's constantly that little subplot of just constantly trying to. He loves her so much, but that's not her, but it is her. It's so crazy. So Steve,
and it stands out so much though throughout the whole issue. You're still thinking of that. Like his desperation, he wants his wife back. She's gone.
He can thank his lucky stars that he doesn't know the truth. Because the truth of it is, okay, as Steve Englehart revealed, she fell in love with the Undying Ones and did terrible things with the Undying Ones. Okay, and when her mind was separated by Doctor Strange, she just disappeared and her mind snapped. If Jack Norris knew that his wife gave herself to the Undying Ones, I think his mind would have snapped. But again, great stuff. Steve Englehart bringing a plot, and then Steve Gerber coming in over the top and saying, okay, you've given me this base. Let me push these characters on. The beauty of the Marvel Universe, the beauty of continuity, and the beauty of two supreme writers at their best.
Yeah. And Steve, the funny thing is, I remember talking to Roy about writing the Defenders. Doctor Strange was so powerful that he could always do whatever he wanted. They always had to try to figure out he gets knocked out or something. They had to get rid of him for a second so the story could progress. And if you noticed in this issue, how they fixed the ship, boom, Doctor Strange he gets him right out of a gym. But I remember Roy telling me that it was so hard because of Doctor Strange. But there you see Gerber. Okay, let's have Doctor Strange. He's up, he's awake, he's doing his thing. He just takes over, makes it the ship fixed, and they go off. But Steve, and this starts they go into the Badoon, though that series, which is phenomenal stuff.
Oh yes, now
coming up
again.
Oh,
we could have done a segment on that whole thing, but it's too much, too long, especially when you get to issue 27 when we see the female Badoon.
And they're worse. And Steve, they're worse than their men.
Oh God, they're way worse. Okay, I always love that.
So Steve, I thanks for this because it did bring me back and like how these comics define me. What do you say, Neil? What do you got?
Yes. I gotta say, man, you know what I loved about this issue is the fact that like we all have issues with comics today, right? But there's a way to do it. There's a way to get your message across and have a bit of an agenda if you want, right? This is at a time where, environmental issues were huge, right? I mean, there's lead levels were high in everyone, air pollution was horrible. We were using other methods of things, the aerosol cans. I thought it was quite humorous, but that's what they thought. Everything was, oh, it's cool. You spray it in a can. You can spray cheese out of a can now. Everything's sprayed out of a can. And I thought it was great that they could still have a positive message for the times, but you still had the grandeur of the story and the characters. And it was a part of the story, but it didn't just take over the story. You know, they could have this, but you still had these the amazing imagery and just the action of what was going on at the time. And like you said, I mean, the bionics are being explained in it, you know, and you see the robotic pieces on the humans. You know, you see the policeman fully suited up for what really doesn't make sense of what's going on environmentally, but it just looks amazing, you know. If it's sun, you know, they should be able to breathe. But anyways, I loved just how they actually incorporated in 1975 environmental issues were huge. And yes, a lot of these great writers that we've had at the time, artists, yes, they were hippies and they brought it in, but they did it in a way that you enjoyed the comic no matter if you were an environmentalist or not.
Yeah, because they didn't hit you over the head with a
Yeah.
preaching. You know,
Right.
a lot
It
of
was
new issues today, and a lot of writers and creators, they're like, my message is more important than the comic story underneath. My message is more important. What Steve managed to do in this issue is have this underlying story. It's like, oh, okay, so our own sort of arrogance and laziness and the way we are led to this. But then after he gets past that little section, then we're on to the fantasy part of it. Okay, again,
Correct.
he's letting us know. So if you really want to read into it, you can go back and look at that panel. You're like, oh God, aerosols and stuff. But by the time you get to 3007, the Baduna are arriving, okay, which is a little bit more hardcore
Yeah.
than a little bit of spraying can.
But and let's do a shout out to Sal Buscema. That issue could not have been that easy to storytell. He had to put a lot of stuff in those panels. Niall, just go really quick to some of the when the flashbacks when he no the future shots. Look at he has to tell so much within those panels. Go to the next page too now. And that look, I mean, that's incredible. That is a storyteller right there. You got to remember, Sal Buscema is getting this script and maybe some details on what to do, but he's got to come up with this thing in his head, and that is what you call a true professional. Sal Buscema sometimes doesn't get the reputation his brother does, but he is still one of the elite of the elites.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you just see like this, look at this. It's like he has to tell so much within a panel that has so much information. Because look at the dialogue. Gerber is very specific on what's going on here, and people have to and remember, not just grown ups, but also children have to understand what's going on. And even as a little kid, I did. That shows you the power. Look at that. I mean, it's amazing what he's putting in just those 4 pages is so much information with words and pictures that right there is comic book storytelling at its finest. And that's why not many artists can you think about this today? It would just be one big panel with all this crud and just like it just you don't see that. And that those are in panels too. All in panels and all that information. Sal Buscema, oh my God, with unbelievable. Because
Oh
if
yeah.
I were to get that script, I'm just saying really quickly now, I'm sorry. If I were to get that script, I would have been like, okay, what does he want me to do? Like I got to put all that here. Like think about that. That is a true professional. I'm sorry now. Go ahead.
That again, exactly. It's a huge point on just structure of comics. This is a prime example. We've traveled in those 4 pages out of an 18-page floppy here that we went from basically, let's say 1975 to like year 3007, right? At some point and beyond. And but you could feel the time travel. You went on that journey within 4 pages with roughly 20, maybe 25 panels throughout the 4 pages. It's unbelievable. You don't get storytelling like that. You don't.
Now that would be a summer event. Just those 4 pages would be like a summer event. You know, Steve, like that's like a Secret Wars thing. Like if it were today, it would be this huge thing. But that's the genius of like what was going on then. You tell the story, you're concise, and it wasn't just cluttered together. You could follow it. Think about that. I mean, if you really think, like I said, I wasn't a sophisticated 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. I was reading that stuff and it was so clear to me and it was so cool because you got to see those characters in continuity. They're like, oh yeah, that's Killraven. I remember that. And then you went back and you wanted to see who the hell Killraven was and all that, that classic issue and all that stuff.
I
But
think,
it's wonderful.
and I'm going to give I'm going to use some American vernacular here, a shout out to Mr. Kurt Busiek and Carlos Pacheco on Avengers Forever. Okay. Now, on Avengers Forever, they reference a lot of this. Kurt Busiek was probably one of the last to be able to weave these extremely complex stories.
Yeah,
and of course, he was assisted by Roger Stern. Okay, we're talking legends. Okay, so there's a little sequence there where they references all of this stuff in Avengers Forever. Again, and of course, Avengers Forever, I think, is 1998.
Yeah, I remember.
1998, and here we are in 2022, and I have not seen anything comparable. Okay, because of course, Kurt Busiek grew up reading this stuff. Okay,
yeah.
He loved Gerber. He loved Engelhardt was his god. Okay, so he knows this stuff through and through. So when he was able to do it, and of course he had an art, Carlos Pacheco, by the way. Carlos Pacheco's art is beautiful, and he did a lot of great work. I mean, of course, Perez would have also done a great job here. But still, it's funny how we always end up with a slightly, like a tear falling from our eye because we remember this and we would like to see more of it, but right now we're not getting it. We're not getting it. But I'm hoping and I'm praying that if someone was watching this show and has never read this issue, okay, and it's like, that's not the real Guardians. My Guardians are such and such. And they go back and they read this and they can go, oh my word. Well, wait a minute. Is there a trade or anything about Killraven? Is there a trade, about Deathlock? Okay. And then we've opened up Pandora's box and then they're gone. They're going to be up to their neck because of this show. I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. So, so, hey, we'd like to thank everybody for seeing this. Steve taking us on another journey. Baby Thanos is making a mess of the place again with information, but it always does take me back. And we have a lot more people coming on, and we got a lot more chills, thrills, and spills. And I can't wait to be a substitute teacher and teach you. I got a few good things coming up. And we have a special guest again who's going to take us like the real teacher is going to teach us his version of what he's done. So that's great. So Niall, any closing comments?
Yeah, no, another great episode, guys. Looking forward to it. And everyone, again, make sure you get out there, look at the bottom of this screen right now, click that subscribe button and smash the bell to get notifications because there's so much great stuff coming from the Steve and Cimino Says Boom show.
All right, Steve, get us out of here.
Boom!
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.